So I guess we can slowly make a gentle start and that other people will join. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. For those of you who are returning, welcome. This is the latest in a series of webinars that we are hosting from EMLYON Business School in France. We're doing this as part of an initiative that we've called Sport Assist, which is essentially, or started out essentially as trying to make sure that sports students around the world remain connected and have the opportunity to talk to people working in the same field as them during these difficult times. But it's become something more than that. And what we now have is people who are interested in sport joining us, but also people who are participating in sport joining us as well. And that leads me nicely into today, which is a women's football Q&A. And I am joined by three players. And I'm going to say, I've been trying to decide for quite a long time, what order do I introduce you in? How do I do this? So that one doesn't feel left out and comes last. But I'm going to do it in a way that I think I should do it. And I'm going to introduce firstly to Arianna, simply because Arianna used to be one of my students. And so I need to kind of, thank you, Arianna, for not causing.
You're welcome. I thought you were going to throw the age thing out there.
No, it's okay. No matter how old you are, I'm older than you, so I'm not going to talk about age at all. We've also got Laura and Hallbera with us as well. So I'll leave them to talk a little bit about themselves in just a second. What I want to do is just to set the scene a little in terms of I've got a set of questions that I want to ask them. And the guests know what these questions are, but as they talk, please do feel free to send in questions, and I'll try and sift through these questions as we go. Sometimes it's very difficult to filter the questions because there are so many and people are asking lots of different things, and trying to establish a common thread in amongst the questions is difficult, but I'll try to do that. And Hallbera, Laura and Arianna have agreed to answer your questions. But I guess given that I know what Arianna is like, and I know that she's used to asking questions and answering questions, if I could start with you, and I'll ask Laura and Hallbera as well, how are you spending the lockdown?
Inside. No, I'm actually in France, so we have quite stringent rules. I think kind of like Laura, not as bad, especially I'm currently in Rennes, France, so I regularly in Paris, but I left Paris, which I'm happy about because the rules are even tighter there. So I am allowed to go outside and run for an hour a day, or just be outside.
Okay, and
otherwise, science and yoga, online French classes, reading a lot.
Okay, sorry. There was a little bit of technical interference there, so sorry if I interrupted. So from France, how would you currently assess the current situation in French women's football? What's the view from France on that?
Like football in general, as we're talking, or with COVID-19?
If football. Well, women's football.
Yeah.
If you want to say something about football in general, because I understand I've been told that men may also be playing football or be interested in football as well.
Once in a while they play.
Yeah, kind of. But we're here obviously to talk specifically about women's football, but do feel free to talk about the situation in general.
Well, currently, obviously, right before everything happened, we were getting a big wave of positive attributes to women's football, streaming off of the Women's World Cup this summer, especially happening in France. We've seen a little bit more in broadcasting, more people coming and watching. And unfortunately, right before we got locked down, everything stopped on Friday, and Saturday we were supposed to play Lyon, who's 3 points ahead of us for the league. So it puts us in quite uncomfortable position. We wish we could have played that game, but like everybody, it stopped, and we're all just waiting for the federation, the health department, and I think even a little bit of UEFA to decide how they want to proceed with this, knowing that we can't all just jump back onto the field as soon as quarantine opens back up, which is supposed to be May 11th. But yeah, they're trying to figure out the safest way to get us back to the playing field, and we hope that that's still possible in order to finish this season.
Mm-hmm. And do you have any sense of when that might be?
No, they're saying that possibly we'll start gradually training in small groups as soon as that happens. But especially with my team, we have so many foreigners that actually left the country that we don't know how they can come back into the country. So it's going to be a unique situation to work with. I have heard from the men's side, though, that in about a week or 10 days, they might start training in small groups.
Do you think you're going to need a preseason warm-up?
I think for sure they're going to give us about a month to pre-seed, to come in, at least 2 to 3 weeks, but for sure a month. There's no way we can come off of this and jump right back into intense games.
Mm-hmm. And Lara, obviously in Italy, many of us are familiar with how serious the situation was in Italy. How is it for you in during this period? What have you been doing? And what about, again, the view from Italy? What's happening in women's football in Italy right now?
So hi everybody. First of all, like in Italy, the situation was very bad at the beginning, and now it's getting better every day. And this is one of the best infos that we can have every day. The best news is that our country is getting better and better and better. I think we all know that it will be difficult to start again the season because of all the problems we get from the healthy side. Naturally, everyone wants to step back into the season just when we have the 100% sure. So we want to be 100% sure that everything will be safe, and that we won't have any risk of keeping the virus. So this is the first thing. Then from my side, I think so we were at the top of the table with the 6-point break from the second one, and I think yeah. So I don't know how it will be, what they will decide, but I think healthy comes first. So I just don't think about this. First of all, like I think this period will be also like helpful for us because we will have the time to spend to enjoy our families and the time just out and away from work, and it will help us like to regenerate and to free our minds from all the stress we get during the season. It will like it's nice sometimes to see the things from another point of view, and to think that we can find something positive also in a so negative period as it was now.
Lara, how do you keep fit during this time?
So every day I plan my days on around training. Like I work out, I plan to what to cook, what to eat, and which kind of training I will do this day in these days. So I think planning is the first, like is the basic to build up all the days here, because we don't know when we will start again, if we will start again. So we always have to auto-motivate ourselves to do our best to be fit and ready for the beginning of the season.
Hallbera, I saw on I think on Twitter last week, Łukasz Fabianski, the West Ham goalkeeper, he had his 5-year-old son taking penalties in the back garden, and he was really taking this seriously. You know, I'm talking about Łukasz Fabianski, not his son. You know, Fabianski was taking this really, really seriously. And how obviously you need to keep fit, but at the same time, in terms of, I guess, like that match practice, can you have any match practice at this time?
Unfortunately, I don't. So fortunately, I don't have a garden. So for a goalkeeper, I think is more difficult than for a normal player, if from a field field player, yeah, because is a kind of, we can't do what we usually do, and it's pretty difficult to dive into the ground or anything else. Like this is very hard and painful actually. So I think we have to just find something different to do, and just to keep radiant, to keep smart.
Yeah. So I mean, Hallbera, are you as a centre forward? The other two, I know the other two are kind of strange people because they're goalkeepers. Whereas you're a centre forward. And how can you stay kind of match ready and have that mentality when you're locked down?
Well, actually, I've been playing as a left back for the last years, so
okay.
I'm getting closer to the goalkeeper. So
they told me yesterday you've been playing as a centre forward.
Yeah, it's been a while now, but I've been
really. When we played together, she was a winger.
I know. I can do both. But...
Okay, let's just settle on. Apparently, you play football in some. Yeah. I guess they're what you call a utility player. You can play everywhere.
No, I think it's been very hard because obviously you can't play football. I mean, you can run, you can keep fit, you can do like workouts, but when it comes to playing football, it's like, but it's going to be the same for every team. So every team is going to start at the same beginning. So it's kind of like coming out of having an injury and coming back after a long time. But I think it's important trying to keep your head focused, and at least you can try to be in the best shape of your life. So I think once you know how to play football, it doesn't take that long time to get back to that top level, I think.
You used a phrase there, keep your head focused. What does that involve?
Yeah, I mean, the first weeks, I haven't had like a lockdown in Iceland. We are able to go outside and go to the grocery store and everything, but there's no football. So it's hard when you need to, for example, work out in your living room because the gym is closed. You need to like go on a Zoom fitness class, and it can be easy to just start thinking negatively about this. And of course, this is not fun. It's not fun for anyone. So I think that's the most important thing you can do now is try to stay positive. Use this as something, yeah, like I said, you can come out of this being in the best shape of your life because you can work out, you can go outside running, and then the football will come normally, I think, once we start training again.
Mm-hmm. So how is the situation in Iceland in football terms? What's the FA saying? What are the other clubs saying? What are the players saying?
Well, we have a summer league, so it was supposed to start last week, I think, but right now no team has been, and like you can't train together. So I think we're gonna start training again in small groups of 4, the 4th of May.
Mm-hmm.
And then the season, we are going to try to start it in the mid of June. But I don't know, I think it can be very difficult because if you get one player that gets sick, you need to like quarantine a whole team for 2 weeks. So I don't know if it's possible because we have a time frame, because in winter it's hard to play football in Iceland.
I was going to ask you, so what is the final date in the year, do you think? When do you basically say we can't play anymore?
Yeah, well, I think we can play until maybe in the beginning of November, but the weather here is so unpredictable that you can get like snow, wind, the conditions aren't always that good, but we might have to suck it up and just play in a snow blizzard.
Okay, and if I could move back to you, Arianna, and shift the question a little bit. Obviously, Arianna, you and me know each other from a classroom situation. I don't think we've ever played football against each other, but I really wouldn't fancy my chances. If we were to play football against each other, I really wouldn't fancy my chances. So I'll stick with professor and student. That's good for me.
Okay.
But on that basis, how did you get here? How did you become a professional footballer? You know, when did you start playing? You know, did you go straight from school into a club? How was it?
So I'm not going to bore everybody because I feel like I've done a couple of these at the very beginning of how I started playing soccer, but I grew up playing soccer in California. And in America, we have a great system where we can play in universities. So from club football or academy, I guess it is in Europe, I went straight to university and I was able to play at a top level at top universities. But at the time, there was no professional league for women in the United States. And I really wanted to become a professional player and continue my career. So with that said, I knew the only way to do it was to come over to Europe. And I came straight over to Sweden. And during that period, I worked on getting my Italian passport, which is how I know Laura. And because of being able to get my Italian passport, I was able to play overseas. Otherwise, it used to be, I think now it's a little bit easier because the leagues weren't professional for women. They were going to tax the clubs too much to have Americans playing on the team. So by having my Italian passport and being the EU, I could play overseas.
Okay. Laura, how was it for you? How did you get here? How do you sign for Juventus as their goalkeeper?
I signed for Juventus after being 5 years in Germany. As I was 19, I decided after the high school to leave Italy, to leave my family and my friends to move to Germany, 950 kilometers away from everyone. So because I wanted to be a professional football player. So then I just wanted to challenge myself with something bigger, like because in Italy we weren't professionists at all. I was just training 3 times a week, and I wanted to do more. I always thought if I want to improve myself, I have to try at least to change my mind and to change the league at least. So the first thing. So I decided to go to Germany. I had the chance to do it after the Youth World Cup in Japan, under 20. And from that point, 5 years just flew away, and I came back to Italy signing for Juventus.
Can I just ask Laura, Arianna, do you work doing other things, or are you entirely professional?
Yeah,
are you asking me or Laura?
Both.
Both?
Okay. Go ahead, Laura. You lead the way.
I start. Okay. So no, at the moment I'm studying. I'm also studying for like as a sport science, something like this. Specialized on football, on soccer. And do
you want to name check your university?
This is Università San Raffaele of Rome. And this is a telematics. Università San Raffaele, and is like yeah, like I just have the last exam in 2 weeks, so in May, and I hope to finish everything in November. And in my time in Germany, I always worked. I made different works, and it really helped me for understanding the culture of the nation, and the German mentality is pretty difficult from ours. So it really helped me to integrate into the new culture.
Okay, Arianna, I'll come back to you in just a second, because I know I'm aware of what your job is, but Hallbera, obviously when we practiced yesterday, and this is why I've asked the question, you said, okay, I can't practice anymore. I've got to go back to work. So, I mean, 2 things. I guess you're working. What kind of work are you doing, if you feel you can tell us? And the other thing, of course, is tell us, how did you get to this point in terms of being a player?
Yeah. Well, I used my time as a professional football player to study online. So I got my BS degree in business and management. And when I moved back to Iceland 3 years ago, I think, I decided that I wanted to use my education. So I started to work in a bank. I work in Landsbanken as a corporate service agent. So we had a busy day yesterday. That's why it was hard to have a Zoom meeting with you. But yeah, that's what I do. I go to work every day from 8 to 4, and then I practice every day as well. So busy days.
Okay, and Arianna, tell us a little bit about what you do right now alongside your playing career.
So I currently play for Paris Saint-Germain, but when I signed a contract, I actually have two fully different contracts, but two contracts with the club. One as a player on the women's first team, and a second one within the business department on the women's side. So I head up women's sponsoring, and I do some work in women's development of football for Paris Saint-Germain.
Okay. I just want to step back from my questions for a moment, because there are a couple of questions come through which I think are really interesting, and hopefully you can answer them. So the first one is from Jacob, which is how often do you all communicate with your club during this time? So I guess there's a kind of general question there. How do you talk to your club, and how often do you do it? Laura.
So this is a nice question, because at the moment we are not communicating to our club. We are training through the indications of our athletic trainers. So we are following a program, a training program, but we actually didn't have any contact, like video contact with our club. But we will have it in the following days, because we will program again our step back to the season, hopefully. And so this is what we're doing at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Arianna?
We don't have that much communication, but we're actually technically under like a paid furlough type thing from the French government. So the club is actually not allowed to be talking to us, because that would entail work, and that goes against the statute of what we're now constituted under. So it's a little more complicated in France. However, our coach and then my goalkeeper coach regularly just gets in contact with us, but it's more on a personal level rather than a footballing level, just to see how you're doing and how you're mentally coping with the situation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And Hallbera?
Yeah, we have just a program that we follow every day. We have like this little GPS thing that we need to have it on our backs when we run, so they can track us, so there's no cheating.
Mm-hmm.
And then twice a week we have a Zoom fitness class where everybody meets and does the same workout, which I think is really good, because at least you meet your teammates, although you're not like in the same room. But it's because social, it's such a big part of football, having the teammates.
Mm-hmm. So
I think it's really important to try to at least see them online.
Okay. The second question, I think you've answered. This was from Ionis, who was asking, do you follow a formal training program conducted by the training staff during this period, or do you make up the training your own? I think we kind of answered that, Ionis, didn't we? I think we did. There's another question about pandemics and sponsorships, which we'll perhaps come back to later. We'll save that one for later, I think, because what I would like to do, if I can, Arianna, is to talk about not now during the pandemic, but back in the old days, back in January, as a player, what typically would your day look like? And obviously we already know that all three of you are working, studying, so you're combining. But Arianna, tell us about your day. What would your day typically involve?
So I think the other ladies can concur with me on this one, though, that it just depends on what day of the week it is and depending when the match day is. So that completely varies our training sessions. So if it's a day after a game or 2 days after, it's probably a lighter session, or depending if you played or didn't play, how hard that session is. But a typical hard session day, we get to the training and we have breakfast as a team. And breakfast is usually between 9 and 9:30, depending. And then we have a training session at 10:30. Usually after that session, there can be a weight session pulled into that. Or then we go straight to lunch and we have lunch as a team. And if we already did our weight session, then the day is over. If the coaches chose not to do the weight session, then we have a second training session that day. For me personally, if we don't have a second training session after lunch, I usually get dressed and I head into the office to have meetings, and I'll stay into the office until 6 or 7, or I will go home and go online and work from home.
Okay. And in this day, in this typical day, is there a big emphasis on diet, on analytics, on kind of monitoring and understanding rival teams' tactics and the way they set themselves up? Is that something that's prevalent?
So we have a nutritionist that follows our team, and she works on the men's team too. We get weighed once a week, and we get our fat checked once a month. So they control that, and depending on where you are in that scale is how much they're paying attention to you personally. If you're fine, you're fine, and if you're over or under something, then she's communicating with you more. However, she also decides what we eat every day. So we do have a buffet type lunch, but it's all healthier type foods and healthy choices. So breakfast and lunch is pretty easy because the club provides it for us. So from the health factor, that works. On the analytics, I think that depends club from club, and we usually only have game video after a game, which the coach goes over with certain players, or the day before a game, or when we go on the road the night before, we'll watch the video.
Mm-hmm. And Laura, how is it at Juventus? Similar, and in terms of your day, how is your day?
Yeah, in Juventus is pretty similar to PSG. How Arianna said, we have, it depends from the day. We talk about usually in Italy we play on Saturday, so we have a free day on Sunday, and from Monday we start again with the normal session training. Usually who played is making a different training, not so hard as the other players who didn't play. But on Tuesday we have double training, so double session training. In the morning we are free to have breakfast at home, then we just meet for training. We have usually 30 minutes of warming up together, we call it activation. Is 30 minutes time where we just warm up all the muscles more involved in our sport or in our, for example, role, position. For example, I warm up different muscles from the other players, and I try to do specific exercises to power my muscles. This is very important. And then we start the training. After training, we are free to eat in the all together in the center. Otherwise, we can go home and just eat home everything we want. And naturally, we are followed by a nutritionist who tells us what is better for us to eat. If you have any need of eating something special. For example, I don't eat milk and derivates because I can't, and so I eat something different. And she gives me a menu where is everything indicated with the grams, and then nothing. In the afternoon, usually we are free. If we have double session, we meet for the double session for the second session, and then we are free.
Hallbera? Go to the bank and then.
I think the difference is that in Iceland, the clubs aren't really professional clubs. So we have players that have school, work, most of them. So we always train in the afternoon. So I think that's the big difference. We do our thing in the day, we go to work, go to school, and then we meet at around 5 for practice. And usually it's 6 days a week that we train. We have maybe 1 day off. I have to say I'm very happy we don't have a nutritionist, so I'm allowed to eat what I want.
This is a good point. I want to come to Ireland.
Oh my God, sorry, but I lived with Hallbera, and all I remember is Nutella. All day. Hallbera had the biggest jars of Nutella the whole time.
Nutella is for everyone.
Can I just say, as someone who's been in Iceland, they've got some pretty interesting food as well there, which you don't find elsewhere in the world. I'm not going to say anything else and just leave it at that.
But I think like that's not food that we normally eat. I think I would say we are pretty healthy. We take care of our weight ourselves, and I mean we have people working at the club. If there's a problem, then obviously someone would take care of it. But most of the players are professionals, even though they are not playing at a professional club. So I think we have a good mindset, so we take care of it ourselves.
Okay, I'm just trying to look at some of the questions in the sidebar, and this is the great thing about these webinars is people do actively engage and want to know things, and again trying to tie all of these questions together is incredibly difficult. But there's one in particular that has really caught my attention, and I'm going to read it. It's from Peter. And he says, a number of female government leaders have excelled in leading their countries through this tumultuous time. Can you comment on why you think this is, and how women's football can also lead? I think that's I think it's an interesting question. If you want to comment on the female leaders, I'm happy for you to do that. But the reason I picked this one out is going forward from here. What role do you think women's football can play in helping us to emerge from the virus? Laura, you got views on this?
Yeah, like I think this is pretty difficult in this period. Like I think women's soccer and women's football is yeah, like we are on a crossroad in this moment. In everything we have in bad periods, for example, we are on the crossroad where you can die, or you can find, or you can go through better things. I think women's football is on the same crossroad at the moment, because this is like one of the weaker part of football. Of course, we are not so strong as movement as the men's one is, and I think we just have to take care of women's soccer and of course of our nations. The first thing we have to do are investing again in what is better for the moment. Like for example, just giving money to continue the path we were just walking on before, and on the same time we can better it, we can make it better. Mm-hmm. How? Like now at the moment we are stopped, so we stopped. And if we want to see like through this period, we can just try to develop ideas that we can make realistic in a like as soon as possible. So this is we can improve the movement just using this period to giving new ideas, learning from mistakes as made before, and building up something new that we should have done maybe before.
Mm-hmm. And Hallbera, what role do you see for the women's game moving forward from here?
I mean, it's obviously a difficult time. I think that, you know, the big sponsors that are putting money into the football world, I think they need to look and be social responsible and look at it as an investment in both the women's and men's football, because I think as a company you would need to make sure that a certain amount of your sponsorship goes to the women's club as well. I feel like it would be easy to just stop the money, because obviously we don't give as much back in regards of money, but I think it's so important to have good female role models, and you have to make sure that young girls see these strong women playing football and see that it's possible to do it as a professional. So I think it's really important that we keep growing and the companies keep putting money into the football world for women.
Arianna, you want to say a little more?
Sure. I think on the aspect of the government level, not to talk about the countries, a lot of people have argued though that the reason those women are doing so well and so successful is because they're smaller countries or they're countries that haven't been hit as hard. However, I also think that women who get to higher positions, especially in government or other roles within companies, are usually already prepared and have already dealt with a lot of adversity, and they're more ready to get things done, step in, get their hands dirty, and figure stuff out quickly. Rather than listen to a bunch of people, they kind of take their own advice and what they've already lived through in order to sort things out. It's all my personal opinion, but so I think that's why a lot of women have been so successful in this personal pandemic. And I think on one hand, within women's football, it might be the same. Women are already prepared to work while they play. They're already prepared to study while they play. They've already been doing that for years. That after this pandemic, if unfortunately the funds aren't there anymore, I think women will still figure it out, because they've been doing that for 20, 30 years, ever since football was actually legalized to play by women throughout Europe. So while it might be a little detrimental and our forward growth won't be as fast as we'd hope, I still think they'll overcome just because they've been used to it. If unfortunately the top 5 leagues in Europe take a big hit, which from an economic standpoint they're saying is going to happen, I don't know if all those men will still be able to deal with it as well if their paychecks aren't what they used to be.
There are all kinds of questions coming in. Just brilliant questions. Can I say to whoever's posted a question, if we don't answer those questions, #SportAssists on Twitter, and hopefully maybe we can answer some of the questions there. But apologies to you if we don't answer your questions here. Apologies to you. I'm going to pick one in particular though, because I'm an English guy working in a French business school, and there are lots of great things about this, and then there are lots of things that I think, what are they doing? Why are they doing that? So the question is from Melina. Given that you've all played played in different countries, what have you noticed in terms of the culture of the clubs within which you're working, but also the fan cultures? Do you notice, what's your sense of some of the cultural differences? I mean, Hallbera, how was it for you when you were elsewhere? What did you notice?
Well, I mean, I went to Sweden. I played there for 3 years. So I don't think that Sweden is that a big part from Iceland. But I also went and played with Arianna in Italy and Sassari Torres. And that's where I saw a new culture. And it was strange. It was like both good and bad. I think it was very masculine, the culture there, but it was fun seeing the difference between Sweden and Iceland and then Italy.
So in being in Italy, how did you get used to the culture? How did you adapt to it? Did you become more Italian, or did you become more Icelandic, or was there somewhere in between that you settled?
Arianna, do you want to answer that, or?
No, I'm gonna let you take this. I lived there longer, so it's not the same thing.
No, I mean,
hey, I just look at you.
Yeah.
Pay attention on what you say.
No, I guess I can say that I followed Arianna's lead. She welcomed me into her apartment, so I got a room in the same apartment that she had. So it was hard for me to adjust to eating at 9-10 in the evening. That was strange to me, and I didn't get the hang of the coffee thing. But other than that, I enjoyed the Italian culture, and I would like to come visit again. But I can't say I'm Italian.
What about for you, Laura? What is your experience of working in different cultures, and how did you adapt to that?
So when I went to Germany, I was pretty young, like I was 19, and it was my first experience abroad. And the first thing I remember, one of the first days I was working in a factory, I was always 5 minutes late. After 1 week, the boss came to me and said, "Hey, if you want to work here, you have to be 5 minutes early every day, not 5 minutes late. Otherwise, you can stay home sleeping." And I came back home. At the beginning, I didn't understand it actually. Like, I said, okay, like he's just telling me that's not good. But then I came back home and I said, oh my God, like if I don't go really, if I'm not like 5 minutes earlier every day, I get fired here. So if I want to go on working and surviving here in Germany, I want to change something. Then this is one of the first change I made. Like in Germany, they are always early. In Italy, we are always late. So I had to find like equivalence, you know. And yeah, so this is one of the many things I just found different from Italy. Then the way of eating, the food, of course, are when you used to live in Italy and eat good food. I think the best food in Europe, I'm sorry, I have to say it, is
oh, come on. Surely England has got the best food in Europe. That is a joke, by the way. That is a joke.
No, but yeah, I think so that was difficult at the beginning to full like to find the same things because you always try to bring your nation with you, you know. But when you are in a different country, you have to adapt to the new way of living, and this is one of the most difficult things. But when you do it, you really change your point of view, and everything in your mind and your character involves and really changes. This is the thing.
To say, when you're talking about the food in Italy, I thought it was so strange. Before every game, we had the same food. I think it was like pasta, some kind of cake, and
crostata.
Yeah, that was so strange to me.
Are we talking about 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, now it's the same. Like nothing changes.
So Arianna, I obviously we both work in France, and one of the things that I've noticed whenever I'm with colleagues is they stop for lunch. That's in England, we don't stop for lunch. They stop for lunch, but the other thing is they want to drink wine at lunchtime. So
I don't have that problem with my colleagues because we're sporty and we won't like. I can't drink.
Anyway, you know, we're academics. We're drunk most of the time. So that's why we're. So how do you find it, Arianna, being in France?
Well, in France I've played in 5 other countries besides the US, so I've had a lot of culture shocks and getting used to it. And I played in Italy, and not just Italy, I played in Sardinia with Hallbera, which is a very small island, and it has its own culture separate from Italy. Like even Italians will say there's some separate stuff. Thanks, Laura, for the net and nod. But in France, there's so many things you have to get used to, personally, in my opinion. I don't know if you've experienced. The one that always, not the only one, but I have to like say hello to every one of my teammates every day, and give 2 kisses to anybody in like a higher, like our coaching staff or the medical staff every day. We see you every day, but you still have to say hello every day. And I've actually in other teams had some problems with this where I went and asked if it was cool if I just said like, hi everyone, because I usually got to the field earlier and would train and like warm up. And every time a new player would get to the field, I'd have to stop to go over and say hello. And for me, that was just nuts. But so I asked, guys, I'm just going to do this. Don't take offense. And I actually had our coach come back to me and tell me that the players didn't like that and that was rude and like, how could I do that? But for me, it's just strange.
That's really interesting, right? Because when you go into a shop in France, you have to say hello.
Yeah.
So no matter which shop it is, you have to say hello. And if you don't say hello, it's considered being rude.
Or when you go in the office, usually when you pass like each person's office, you step in and say hello. And for me, it's so strange, especially to give kisses to people I don't really know.
Well, I have to say, as an Englishman, as you may know, the English have been practicing social distancing for centuries, not just for weeks. We've been, you don't touch, you don't kiss. And I found very often I found myself in the embrace of a man kissing me on the cheeks, and I'm thinking, why are you doing this to me? So it is, it's it's really, yeah, it's really funny. So
But
Malika,
on this note, actually, I'll add. Sorry, if I could add
yeah,
something
sure,
that
sure.
might be fun for people to know. Saying hello to every person, but as soon as the virus kind of came out and before we were on quarantine, they actually put up posters all over our training center to explain to us how to say hello to somebody without physical contact. So they actually explained to us like 6 different ways you could say hi to people without contact. And for the foreigners, it was like, yeah, obviously. And for the French, they're like, oh, this is crazy. Like, how do you say hello without physical contact? So I thought it was pretty funny, and we would all just laugh about these little images of like, hi, how are you? One of them was even like this. So these were funny.
So whilst we contemplate being kissed by lots of people we don't know, I want to move on a little bit to talk about the off-field side of women's football, and it's obviously a part of what you do, particularly you, Arianna, because you're working off-field. We've been through a period, certainly in Britain, we've been through a period over the last 5 to 10 years where women's football, which I think in Britain 10 years ago was largely anonymous, and suddenly it's not anonymous, and we're seeing with the strengthening of some of the clubs across the world, certainly in Europe, where we're seeing the big clubs, PSG, Juventus, and others, much more in the spotlight. We have sponsorships coming into the game. There seems to be much more of a more formal, serious approach to women's football. I'm just wondering, therefore, Laura, how do you see off the field the future of the women's game? Where are we now and where are we going?
So I think women's football is really growing up so fast, like very, very fast. 5 years ago, we could never expect this kind of change. And but now, like the visibility is really going on very, very fast. Like the media is following many games. And the visibility brings naturally also more followers. Everything. So for all these things, we have to thank, in Italy, for example, we have to thank the big clubs, the men clubs, coming into the women's football, because they really helped us to give the visibility to the movement. I think the more, I think also competition brings naturally fans and followers to the game. The more competition you have between the teams, the more the clubs grow up, and the more visibility and interesting from the followers and the fans, the supporters you have that come to you and watch the games and want to see and know you. And this is like a really big word, a very big deal, like moving around the movement, and this really helps growing up to grow up.
Mm-hmm. And Hallbera, how about you? How do you see from your side, from Iceland, what's happening and what happens next?
Yeah, like I said before, I just hope that the sponsors and the clubs they still keep focused on making the women's club better. And it can be easy to just shut down the money, because the men's game, you can get a lot of money out of that. But I'm just hoping that with everything that's going on, we can still move forward and we don't have that big of a setback. Mm-hmm. The women's I know that play football, they are all so professional that I think like Arianna said before, we're used to going through so much to be able to play, that I'm hoping that we can use this as a strength and just keep moving forward. Mm-hmm. And the big clubs, like they're doing in Italy and England, that they keep supporting the women's game as well. That's so important.
Can I just ask you, Hallbera, is when you look at the Juventus and the women's team and Paris Saint-Germain and the women's team, how do they seem from Iceland? Do they seem kind of big, glamorous clubs, or do you take a different view of them?
No, I mean, of course, it's. I feel like I was starting again. Like I feel like now it's all moving so much like forward, and the opportunities are getting so much bigger, and it's just amazing to look at what the big clubs have done for the women's football, and I just hope that they keep doing it.
Mm-hmm. Arianna, how about you? What do you think about what's happened, and what do you think about what might happen next?
I obviously 100% with what Laura and Hafa are saying on both ends. There is clearly a fear amongst the women's game, though, that if financial problems come into play, a lot of those bigger clubs where they're going to want to save money is on the women's side. But again, I think we shall overcome. We will be able to deal with that and work with that. And I think a lot of focus, which has started and just needs to continue, is also at the grassroots level for little girls to have the opportunity to play the game, to have the opportunity to train, to have the opportunity of other like little girls playing with them. It's awesome to join the boys. I played with boys when I was younger. I'm sure both of them did too at some point, and that's fantastic. But sometimes little girls also need to be in an environment where they see people who look similar to them. And I think one outlet that really did happen with this Women's World Cup, and I think Laura touched on this, was, and actually Amber too, giving little girls players to look up to. And I think this is really important. Now they can see what they actually can become. They can play in the World Cup. They can work in football. And I think these aspects are really, really important to continue to grow the game, because it's from the youth and levels that's going to bring us that are too far away from other teams, and our championships are too far away from each other. You know, there's certain games where certain teams just are not going to lose the game, and that doesn't make it as exciting for fans or sponsors. So sponsors usually only put money into the big games, or only the big games are broadcasted when we need our leagues to be more competitive from a broadcasting and a fan's point of view.
There's actually a question from Naomi, and she asks, do you think having access to the men's training ground and stadium for the women's team will help increase the following and support of women's football?
So I'll go with this one. We don't have access to the men's training center or Parc de France. We have our own training center and we have our own stadium. Mm-hmm. It's not our, okay, the stadium's not our own.
But that's just as well, Arianna, the men's team is useless.
So from one standpoint, I think it's amazing because we are allowed to be at our training center whenever we want. We can go night or day. We have codes to get in, and we can go in there. We can do extra training sessions. We have some really cool stuff at our facility, like a sauna. So if you want to go there on a Saturday, you can just go in and do whatever you want. And I think this is a really positive, where if the men's, I've played at another pretty big club that had a top men's team, and we weren't allowed to do those kind of things. You had a very set schedule of when you were allowed to be there, when you were allowed to be in the gym. But at the same time, our gym's probably not as nice as the men's gym or things like this. And it's kind of a catch-22, but I like having our own space.
Mm-hmm. Laura, how is it for you? Do you think that there should be that sharing of men's and women's facilities or not?
For us, so we are not sharing the same training ground. For example, like the men's team has their own part, their own side, and it is at the opposite of the city, on the other side of the city. So this is far away from us, and everything is new built. So we are training on the perfect grounds, and we are sharing the training center with the youth. With the men's youth and with the U23 of the men's team that is just newborn this year. Mm-hmm. I think this is a very good. This is good. Like for us, it's no problem because we have our spaces. We can use the structures and planning the days through our needs, and not planning our training sessions in like thinking about the men's the first men's team. Talking about the stadiums, like the last year we had the possibility to play in at Juventus Stadium, and we have never thought that 40,000 people could have come to watch our game at the stadium. I think sometimes is better to have different stadiums from the men's one, because we actually don't have so many people coming to the stadiums and watching or playing a game with a half empty stadium is naturally different from playing in a smaller stadium but full. So I think for us at the moment for women's football this is okay, but if you are playing like at the top of the table with against the second one, like for example Juventus Fiorentina played at Juventus Stadium, that was full, and that was completely another side from
were you in the starting 11 that day?
Yeah, it was. So it was awesome. It was an awesome feeling, and that was the same also in the World Cup. Like the stadiums weren't so big. Like there was like, how was it? Maximum 20,000, I think. Just help me if it's not right.
At the World Cup?
At the World Cup, it was like, for example, we played in Valenciennes and Montpellier. It was like 20,000.
Right, I don't know.
Almost.
I think most League One teams have anywhere from 20 to 40,000, but yeah.
Like it wasn't like there weren't like huge stadiums, but it was the right capacity for the women's game. I think it was right.
Hallbera, men and women share facilities in Iceland?
Yeah, in Iceland it's pretty much the same for women's and men's club, which I think is important. I think it's important for younger kids to see that it's possible for these teams to have the same facilities. I understand that in like Paris and Juventus, it's huge stadiums. So obviously it's nice to have like a smaller stadium to play your games at. But in my opinion, I don't see the problem in top clubs, women's or men, training at the same facilities. But I mean, we're talking about a small team in Iceland and then PSG. So obviously it's not the same.
So let me ask you kind of a different question, but related to that is why don't men's and women's teams share facilities?
I think it's just the way that it's always been. It's always been about the men's team.
So it's a culture. It's a cultural thing.
I think so. It's they're used to being the big stars, and the women's team has been like on the side. But when I went to play in Sweden, I was playing in Stockholm in Djurgården, and there it was like the women's team were training there, the men's team in a completely different part of the city. Sometimes we would go over there, but I don't know. I think it would be really cool to see a big club have their women's team and men's team have the same facilities, the same respect.
So how does this make you feel? Do you get frustrated with this, or do you just accept it? Do you fight it?
No, because it's hard being frustrated, because I feel like we're always getting more and more. But it's also hard to be like happy with not getting everything. You're supposed to be like, yeah, I mean, we get some, but I think in England they have the same facilities in some teams. Manchester City or
okay, well I worked in Manchester, and yeah, it's kind of there's an overlap at Manchester City.
Yeah,
but the women's team play. There are two stadiums as part of that campus.
Yeah,
there's the main stadium, which is where the men play, and then there's a significantly smaller stadium, which is where the women play.
Like I say, I understand that you play the games at a different stadium, because when you don't get the same amount of people watching you. But the training facilities, I would love to see the big clubs just giving the women's team the same respect.
Laura, Arianna, do you want to answer that about frustration or acceptance or fight?
Well, I think I can see why, like, the global clubs in certain aspects, I understand there's very few people that are allowed to be at the training center when PSG men are there, as I assume it's pretty similar at Juventus. It's very closed just for protection of those players and things like that. However, I kind of agree with Barry also in the aspect of coming from the United States, where we go to university and we're surrounded by top athletes in different sports, and we all interact, and we're in the same training room, the same gym, and we use the same facilities. They are blocked off for sport just because of time and how big they are. But because of that too, you become friends with everybody, and you know so many more people. And I think that also changes people's mentality, because if you're in the weight room working out just as hard as the guy next to you, he just learns a whole new respect for women and women in sport, and they just look at you as another athlete in the gym rather than a female athlete in the gym. And I think this part is pretty important, because I personally feel in the US, when you're an athlete, like, you're just an athlete, and there's not as much as a distinction, where here in Europe, because everything is so separated, they're like, yeah, you're a professional soccer player, but you're a female professional soccer player. So I think that distinction comes into play more, where if some of our facilities crossed over, at least at some clubs, I think it would start to change people's attitudes.
Laura?
So I think
it's okay, don't worry about it.
So I'm sorry, I have my cat trying.
Okay, coming on from the subs bench.
So he's trying to be a part of the call. And yeah, so I think the same of Arianna. Like, I think in Europe there's a cultural problem that we are struggling against, and I hope in the following future that it will change, and that how Hallbera said before, like, that we just won't have just one. Just something, we get something sometimes, but we get the whole thing, so that we won't ask for anything anymore, like, because sometimes it's hard to say that it's frustrating always to ask for things, because women usually so we always fought for everything we had, like, for everything we had something to fight for, and we always have to ask for something. Why? Like, it's not nice. Like, sometimes it also has to come from the other side, you know, that they just come to you and say, yo, come on, so you deserve this, so let's take it and just see what happens. I think women's football is really has really a big deep side to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we can make this step,
Mm-hmm.
but just help us to do this.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. From my perspective, I work in a business school. I've worked in business schools for a long time, and I'm really interested in how you break cultures, and you and essentially, you know, those ways of doing things that have always existed and have always endured. How do you break them? And one definition of culture is the way we do things around here. It's a very simple definition of culture, the way we do things around here. And I could ask you a whole bunch of questions about how you break a culture, but I'm not going to, because we've been going for 60 minutes. I'm obviously really grateful to you for being here, and I hope you can just be with us a little longer, because rather than me talking, I want to get some more, or take some more questions. There are 3 questions from Maria, from Mary, and also from Marty. So Marty, I think your question's a great one. I'm going to come to that. That's going to be my final question. But Maria asks a question, which I think is an interesting one. Who have been and who are your coaches? Are they men or are they women? Arianna, are they men or are they women? So, sorry, Arianna, you missed that. Yeah. So
no, I heard. My coaches are men or women.
Yeah. So who has coached you through your career? Men, women? Who's coaching you now? Men or women?
Currently, our coaching staff is male at PSG. I've been coached by men and by women. And while I definitely think women need more opportunities and the ability to go through coaching systems, because I know that's been difficult and some programs are trying to help get more women into coaching. I don't personally like the idea that women have to be coached by women and men have to be coached by men. I like being coached by men who played in the league and who understand certain things and can teach me something that I didn't know before. If I had a female coach who had certain experience or had the knowledge to give me, I'd enjoy that too. But I don't like stigmatizing that just because she's a woman, she should be coaching. I think the best person for the role should be there. And personally, in our league, in League One, we only have female referees, and it drives me nuts. I really don't like that. If we're pushing for female referees to be refereeing in League One, which for the first time this year we had, I just think we need to give opportunities, of course, and we need pathways helping women, because unfortunately there's been a glass ceiling for quite a long time. However, at the same time, I don't think only associating female refs or female coaches in the women's game is the best method.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Hallbera, your view on that?
Yeah, actually I agree with Arianna. At the moment, our coaching staff is all male. I've had 2 or 3 female coaches. One of them is one of the best coaches I've ever had. So I have to agree. I don't think that women should be coached only by women, but like I said, it depends on the coach, the best men for the job or the women. Laura?
I can just agree with them. Like, at the moment, we have women coaching our team, but I think right the same that they said, like the best man or female, men or women or woman in the right position at the right time. So for the right team, so it's okay.
And seeing as I've got you there, Laura, I've got a question from Mary. So Mary asks, I am playing Division 1 soccer as a goalkeeper in the fall. Do you have any advice for a freshman entering high collegiate level? So there. Sorry, I'm reading it as I'm. So yeah. So do you have any advice for a young woman who's about to go to college to play as a goalkeeper?
So I think so for me is always nice the rule of the 3P. I don't know if you ever heard about this. Is like practice, passion, and perseverance are the 3P. I think to become a professionist player or professionist in every job you are doing, like these are the 3 things you always have to keep in your mind, like work, so practice, because without practice you can achieve nothing, because to improve you need to work, because nothing comes from this, and passion, because it's basic, like without passion you don't have the will to do anything, and perseverance, because even in tough periods you have to watch, like always forward, and just continue on your path, so the path you decided to work on at the beginning of when you were young, or when you decided to start it. So this is my advice.
Arianna, former US college soccer goalkeeper to a soon-to-be US college soccer goalkeeper, what would you tell her? What advice would you give to her?
Well, I don't know what school you're going to, so I think that makes a difference. One of the biggest issues I had going in was our fitness. The fitness was nothing I'd ever imagined, and even at a professional level, I've never done any fitness like I had to do in college. So I would definitely take the advantage of this time that you have and really build up your fitness. And besides that, one thing that I wish I could say to my younger self, or I will definitely instill in my children, is to look around at the players that you're playing with. Especially as a goalkeeper, I wanted to come in and be the first goalkeeper and play all 4 years and become an All-American and win a national title. Unfortunately, I didn't get to do those, but I wanted to beat out the other goalkeepers so much that I didn't stop and realize that she had 3 years ahead of me, and there was a lot I could learn from her. So I'd say keep the competitive, want to play, but also look at the goalkeepers that are there, and they definitely have something to teach you. So yeah, I would definitely try to learn from them. Even if they're not trying to teach you, just pay attention to their movement, what they're doing, how they're doing it, because they have something to share, even if they're not trying to.
Mm-hmm. Hallbera?
No, I feel like those advices are great. So the thing is, just for me, it was a struggle with self-confidence. It was always so easy for me to break myself down. But once I got to the point where I was like comfortable with I was confident enough, then you start playing better. So even if you don't succeed at the first game or the first practice, keep going and keep the confidence levels high. Yeah, and just enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm going to wedge what is a statement in the chat box. I'm going to put a question mark at the end of it because I really like the question. It's from Andrew. And if I was to ask you, Arianna, to begin with, is Andrew is making a statement. I think men's soccer has a lot to learn from women's soccer. I'm going to put, as I say, I'm going to put a question mark there. What do you think men's football can learn from women's football?
I think there's a lot that women's football can learn from women's football, but I think it more has to do with the individual players rather than the topic on a whole. I think that many people might agree with me. Right now, we've come to a point in men's football that they're such superstars and they're above everything that some might need to be grounded a little bit more. And this personal experience that's happening right now might be grounding them. But as my two friends in the group have already said, we've had to ask for a lot of stuff and we've had to fight for everything that we get. That when we get it, one, we're never satisfied, but we are happy and we do respect the things that we have, and you never wake up knowing that things are going to be given to you that day, because in women's football they're not, and sometimes they're actually taken away, where I've seen the equivalent of male players that just wait for somebody to do something for them, whether that's give them a personal training program every single day because they might not figure out how to stay in shape on their own, to the medical staff, to everybody just doing every little thing for them, where on the women's side, you have to figure it out if you want to stay in the game and you want to stay at the top. Even when you're like some of the top pros, we're still not given everything by any means. So I think the men's side could possibly learn to take more responsibility for themselves and learn and open their eyes and not be so blinded by everything that they're given.
Just a quick one for you. A friend of mine was very close to an agent representing a fairly high-profile Premier League player, and their light bulb broke, and they actually called their agent to get somebody to go around to the house and fix the light bulb for them. But anyway, let's move swiftly on. Laura, what do you think? What can men's football learn from women's football?
I love every word Arianna said, because I really think the same, and I have nothing to add at it, because I think she said fast everything I have in my mind. And I think in women's football we find the first persons and then you find the players. First, like we are, I think we never forget where we come from, and this is one of our strengths.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask the two of you, because Juventus and Paris Saint-Germain, certainly in men's football, but I know increasingly in women's football too, but certainly in men's football, really, really big names in those men's teams. Do you have any engagement or any interaction at all with these male players? And if you do, how are they with you?
No, actually, we have we have contacts with the men's players. I think so. They are very nice. Some of them are very nice, open, friendly. They are making jokes and they are really normal persons. Like this is they are not so like very stars as they maybe let's see from the pitch, that sometimes people changes on the pitch, and but others are different. Others like don't want to talk with you, or just you try maybe to approach a talk and they don't want to. So it but mostly I found like very like friendly persons.
Same at PSG, Arianna? I think Arianna's connection is. I'll come back to Arianna in a minute. So Hallbera, you know what? In my classes, she always fell asleep. But that's probably more to do. That's probably more to do with me than with her. Arianna, is it the same at PSG? You'd say, nice guys in the main. Some nicer than others, perhaps.
So to be honest, we don't really have that much interaction with our men's team. I've been to some events because of my work side where some of them are, or with some of our activations when we activate our sponsors, there'll be a few of our female players in that activation. Whenever I see them with our players, they're really nice. They joke with the girls. They've always been nice, anything I've ever seen or interacted, but our actual interaction like a low-key manner, it doesn't really happen. They don't really integrate the men's and women's teams together.
So Hallbera, going back to the original question, which was what can men's football learn from women's football? What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, Arianna said it perfectly. I think women are used to working a little bit harder for what they need to do. For example, one of my teammates at the national team, she was a starter for Portland Thorns in the US, and she just had a baby. When she tried to come back, her salary, they couldn't cover the cost of a nanny. So she couldn't continue playing as a professional soccer player. So she had to move back to Iceland, where she's working just as hard. But so it wasn't possible for her to have a family and to play as a professional football player. And for her, it was a simple decision. Like she had a family, so she just moved back. And I mean, we need to sacrifice. I'm sorry, we need to sacrifice a lot more than the male players normally used to do. I'm not saying they don't work hard. I'm not saying they don't have to sacrifice some things, but I think it's obvious that we have to sacrifice something more. And just like the stuff about like financial worries, if you want to play as a professional player, you're not going to get like loaded. You're not going to get really rich and just relax after the career is done. You need to like educate yourself or try to get some work experience or something. So there's a lot of things you need to think about.
So I'm going to move to the final question to try and wrap things up. It's Marty's question. I really like this question. I've been locked down now for 6 weeks, and it occurred to me about 4 weeks ago, where am I supposed to get football magazines from? And I'm just a magazine geek. So no matter where I go in the world, I always buy football magazines, and I don't know, I've got 4,000 or 5,000 football magazines from China and from Russia and from Brazil, and so how do I get my football fix right now? That's how I get my football fix. Mail order football magazines. It's the future. Mail order football magazines is the future. But Marty's question, the reason I'm saying this, Marty's question was, how do you get your football fix during lockdown? So, in terms of watching or thinking or playing or consuming, how do you get your football fix? Arianna, how do you get your football fix?
Well, I think from the perspective of watching games or participating in games, I've done that for so many years that I don't necessarily need like that injection right now. For a couple months, I can go without a game or two. I personally am consumed with football. My fiance also works in football, so every weekend either I'm playing or his team. So I'm good on like watching games. But right now, I think my fix is actually coming into trying to figure out what UEFA is going to decide. I personally thought on the 23rd, more information would have come out of that conference on truly deciding what leagues are going to be doing and when we can come back. But I was not satisfied with UEFA's answer. I don't know about anybody else. The only thing that came out of it for me was that Women's Euro 20, it will be 2022, and that the clubs can now close their season and will be merit-based to go into Champions League. But I feel like my fix is really like being on LinkedIn and following all the American sports and just figuring out where this is going and when I can get back on the field is really my fix of football.
Okay. Laura?
Yeah, I also I always uh, like I have my boyfriend working also in football, so in the north, so during the season, our weekend and our week is like we talk just about football. So we just, how Arianna said, I don't really need that injection. If we can say like this, football is like a drug. When you live with this, you always want more. And my boyfriend is like scout, so at the moment I'm just watching I don't know how many games on Y Scout, and playing a FIFA if there's also a way to get involved in football at the moment. But this is like mostly my thoughts are about the beginning of the season, and if we will ever start again and how. So this is it.
Hallbera, you look for a football fix?
Yeah, I mean, when the grass is getting greener here in Iceland, you feel the urge to see a football match or like go outside and play football. But I think it's also just nice to have a little bit of a break. I've been reading a lot more books and looking into other things, but actually here in Iceland they started showing like old classic games in the TV. So that's the fix I've been getting, old football games.
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm aware that we spent nearly 90 minutes. Maybe just a little bit of extra time to allow me to kind of wrap up. For me, this has been absolutely brilliant, just to listen to three players from the women's game talking about how it is, not just on the field but off the field too. And I think this is the first time that I've ever experienced such a thing. Because very often you'll watch TV or you'll read an interview and it's one player giving their view, or it's sometimes comments on the women's game set in the context of the men's game. So to listen to the three of you just talking freely and openly from your perspective has been incredible for me. It is interesting because I apart from magazines, I'm not seeking a football fix right now. What I do think about is things like how to break cultures and differences between working in different countries. And so your answers, even in that context, for me were just incredible. What I find really heartening is that most of the people who started with us at the top of the hour 90 minutes ago stayed with us, which I think is testament firstly to the appeal of the women's game, but also is testament to the depth and the quality of the answers that you gave. So really thank you very much for those answers on behalf of not just me, but as I said, on behalf of all of the people who showed today. The other thing to say is that what hopefully will happen from my perspective now is that some of those really exciting things that we'd seen happening, and I say this from a very English perspective, it seems as though in the space of 2 years, women's football has gone from being, as I said right at the start, almost anonymous, to being something much stronger and more powerful and really lodged in the minds of people. And I hope that we can come out of this period. Hallbera, I know you were saying, one of the big concerns is when budgets, and maybe you, Arianna, too, that when budgets are being cut, women's teams are the first thing in the spotlight. And I really genuinely hope that that's not the case. And I know we may never return to normality, or certainly the normality that we knew on the 31st of January, or 30th of January. I know we may not return to that normality, but I hope our new normality really has women's football right at the very heart of it, and the sport and kind of women's development and promotion of the game can continue in the same way. Adam, he's used a great word, engrossing. I found it engrossing. Thank you very much for doing it for us. Thank you to everybody who tuned in. It has been engrossing. Just one final word to say, it has been recorded. And what I will do is when the recording is available online, probably on Monday, I'll tweet and I'll put on LinkedIn the link that people can use to share what we've talked about today. So at that point, Hallbera, Laura, Arianna.
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you. Perfect.
Thank you, Simon.
To everybody, stay safe, stay healthy, and see you next time.
A presto.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.